This lady.
My name is Barbara Fullerton. I'm from Pine Grove, and I just want to thank our group here of picking the new china. This happens to be a local pottery to where we live. This pottery has 900 employees there. We have lost a lot of businesses in our towns over in that area of Ohio, and we are thankful for this purchase of the pottery, and we thank you very much for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Joanne?
I like the little tree on the saucer. Is that going to be there? And it's too bad it's not in a big plate.
Yes, that's going to be on the saucer.
Not a big plate?
No, of course not. It'll be covered by food.
Oh. Any further resident comment? Any further board comment or question? All in favor, signify by raising the right hand. Those opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Okay, approved 2011 revised budget. Kevin?
Yeah, there are certain significant changes that have occurred. Can I steal one? Yeah, there are certain significant events that occurred since the preparation and approval of the original budget for the association. So what this schedule is meant to do is show you the revenue items first, what the approved budget was back last year, what the recommended revised budget we think should be, and then what the adjustment is. And we're going to ask the board to, in essence, to approve the adjustment. The first major event that took place is we had the sign-up period for the prepaid manual and trackage, and those numbers came in significantly less than budget. So we're suggesting that now we know exactly what the prepaid revenue is, that we take that down by the $91,600. The other item here, this is a little bit of a commercial for the association. I don't know if you're aware, but we're doing some cart maintenance business now. So if you have golf carts, you can bring them down to the golf pond and they'll maintain it for you. So we're estimating fairly conservatively that'll be $2,000 worth of revenue. So we're suggesting to put that in the budget now that that business is underway. So what's in essence happening in total here is we're suggesting to bring down the revenue budget by $89,600. Okay, and where that's going to be offset, I'll show you on the next slide. Okay, so the first slide was the revenue, and now here are the expenses that we're going to either lower, such as these, or on the next screen you'll see some instances where they're going to be slightly higher. But let's go back to the first screen. So, okay, so for administration, we're going to lower expenses by $13,600. Most of that comes from lower insurance, another event that took place. We signed up for the insurance early in the year, so the insurance came in this case, $96.08 less than what we had budgeted. And then in addition to that, there's a reduction in the storage expense by $4,000. So therefore, administration expenses are going to come down by $13,600. Okay. In member services, that's going to come down $900. Another sort of commercial. If you're not aware, we sell propane gas tanks, you know, for your grill. So if you run out, you need to buy something quickly. The association is selling. So what this is moving $900 of the propane gas tanks expense out of member services and moving it to facilities. We'll see that later on when we get to the next screen, to match the revenue and expenses. The revenue are in facilities, so we wanted to make sure the expenses go into facilities. So this really is a transfer out of this department and into facilities. The food and beverage, they made some changes for the kitchen supplies, linens, various things like that to reduce their budget by $9,300. Same with the pro shop, changing their budget by $5,800. And then if we go on to the next screen, okay, here's where the facilities goes up a little bit. And again, that's taking in that $900 that we saw on the previous screen for the propane gas tanks. And then there's some more money being put in there as expenses against that $2,000 revenue that we talked about for the park maintenance. So that's why that budget actually goes up $1,400. Okay. If you look at golf maintenance and common grounds, you'll see some significant changes there. The net change on the two of those is a net reduction of about $73,000. That reflects the new contract that we signed with Valley Crest. Okay. On an annual basis, we saved $80,000, but that contract doesn't start until March 1st. So we still have 2 months under the old contract, which was a bit higher. So the net savings is $73,000. However, the difference here is that with the Valley Crest contract, one of the things we had asked them is to tell us how much of the work is it that they do that relates to the golf course and how much relates to the common grounds. So they broke it out for us, and they told us that the total bill, by the way, came in at $930,000. So they told us that the total bill was 79% of that for the golf course, 21% for the common grounds. So that's what we're reflecting here, is the change in that percentage. And then finally, in the contingency, what this number really represents is, quite honestly, if we were good in all the other line items of the budget, it would mean that we really don't need to spend this money. And you're going to see this later on when we talk about the renovation. So if the budget is good in all these other, in the line item accounts for all those other departments, then that money would come down as being a profit for us. Okay? And so what we did here is, in essence, with the reduction of the revenue of the 90-some-odd thousand offsetting expenses, we sort of netted out an additional $12,000 that we could add to the contingency. And that contingency, as you'll see later on, will be used to help fund some of the additional work that we're doing now on the clubhouse. So once again, as you can see, we lowered the revenue by 89.6 and we lowered the expenses by 89.6. So we're still back to a balanced budget. Okay, with the exception that that number there, and that's one of the reasons really why we're asking for the budget adjustment. We're trying to zero in on, as best we can, what is this number looking like? Because that's the number we're going to try and use for some of the construction expenses. And we need to know, we need to get a better handle. So as a result of doing these adjustments, we realize that, excuse me, we have another $12,000 to add into that contingency. So I guess the motion I would make, Neil, is that we approve the budget adjustments and we reflect the revised budget in our future comparisons with actual results.
Okay, is there a second? Second. What comments, questions?
Did the board vote on the cart repair shop?
No, that's an operational decision.
I have some comments. I was trying to ascertain whose responsibility it is to adjust the budget, whether it belongs to the board or if it belongs to the GM. I went to the declaration, and it says the annual assessment shall be fixed by the board of directors and shall be the same for each Class A lot. And it's silent on whether the approved budget needs to be readjusted by the board or not. I know the assessment is determined by whatever the projections are for the budget, but the bylaws, the declaration is silent on whether the board is responsible for making any adjustments. I went to the bylaws, and it says it shall be the duty of the board, as more fully provided in the declaration, to fix the amount of the annual assessment against each lot. Send written notice of each assessment to every owner subject thereto at least 30 days in advance of each assessment period. So that too was silent on who's responsible for adjusting the budget throughout the year. I looked at the board policy manual to see what the responsibility of the GM was regarding financial planning. And in here, in a nutshell, it says it assists the board in determining what the budget is. He makes some reasonable projections as to what income is going to be as well as our expenses. And he adheres to the board's stated priorities when making allocations among competing budgetary needs. And I looked at financial condition. That too is also silent as to who makes the necessary adjustments to the budget throughout the year. Whenever there's a blip in the radar, It shows that we have some unexpected expenditures or unexpended income. Then I went to the financial and accounting responsibilities of the contract. And in here too, it's also silent as to who makes the necessary adjustments and who has to approve them. And when you get to the job duties of the general manager in the contract, the last item there, number 7, it says he coordinates the development of operating and capital budgets according to the budget calendar, monitors monthly and other financial statements for the community, takes effective corrective action as required. So my interpretation of that is, if there are blips in the budget, it's up to the GM to make the necessary adjustments. All I care as a board member is that he does not reach the bottom line and doesn't cause an assessment increase. And I think the GM, and we've empowered him for all the operational facets of the association. I think he has the flexibility and the authority to make any changes to the budget without having to go to the board. And my other question is, if anybody disagrees with me, how often do we do this? Every time there's a blip in the radar, we reconvene and readjust the budget. So that's my comment.
Further board comments or questions?
I'd just like to thank Bob for that. That was very impressive.
Any further?
Yeah, I've got one question. There's obviously a change in the allocation of the Valley Crest contract. It appears that we're now increasing the amount of dollars spent on the golf course and decreasing the amount spent on the common areas. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's directly from the contract.
Help me understand how we went from 65% to 79%.
Okay, the real answer to that is we should have never been at 65-35. I was involved in the contract with Valley Crest back in 2005. They specifically indicated in that contract how much of their expenses was for the golf course. That contract was a 3-year contract that went from April 2005 to April 2008. Okay? In 2005 and 2006, the association was recording the expenses. The breakout back then was 71-29. Okay? Somewhere along the line in 2007, that was changed to 65-35. As far as I know, there was absolutely no documentation approving that change. Okay? So the problem is that we went the wrong way when we made that change. Because I specifically asked Valley Crest, why did you go up from 79 to 71? And they said it was because additional work, such as the curfew on the roundworm application, the nematode, again, confusing that word. But so they were doing additional work, but clearly from their mind it was never 65-35. So.
Any further board comments or questions?
I have one more. My preference is just to show the total cost to maintain a golf course in the common area as one lump sum. When you start dividing out the cost, you're essentially putting a wedge in this community, because now you're attributing more cost to golf, and that tends to upset the non-golfers, because now it looks like we're subsidizing the golf course. And in fact, the golf course in the common area belongs to everyone. Whether you use it or don't use it, it's part of this community. It's an amenity of this community. So I sort of don't care for the fact that you divide the cost into the golf course and common area when they both belong to the association.
I think that's what the amenity analysis by the consultants was getting at when they said that we all own the amenities and we should all take part in upkeeping and maintaining.
If I can draw your attention, speaking of the amenity analysis, quite honestly, came from all this stuff on their food and beverage and on golf. Really came from the Patrick Goldman book that they refer to as the 2010 Florida Trends. If you look in that book, as they pointed out to us, the food and beverage operations of the clubs that they